Hey guys, it's Norman Lee with Norman Lee Fishing. I just went in the garage, grabbed myself a rod, and I'm about to go do some practicing. You're probably looking at me and saying, "What? Practicing? You're not even on the water. How could you practice?" Well, guys, I'm about to go practicing in my backyard. Guys, come along with me. Let's go do some practicing. Let's go try to hone in on some of our flipping skills. If I had to put a percentage on what it takes to be a good flipper and pitcher, I would say uh, flipping is all about the accuracy. 50% of being a good flipper is being accurate. It's basically it's all about trying to drop that bait, whether you're 4 foot away from your target or 20 foot away from your target. You're trying to drop that bait right on top of where you think that fish is laying. And sometimes the hole you're trying to put it in is no bigger than 4 or 5 inches in diameter. But in order to get that fish to eat that bait, you got to drop it right in on top of her. So accuracy is very key in being a good flipper. Now, one way you could practice without even being on the water is get out in your yard. Um, get yourself a 1 gallon paint can. I actually use a cornhole target, but you don't need to have a cornhole target. 1 gallon paint can, 5 gallon bucket, anything to give yourself a target to drop the bait in. Fishing's a sport. Whether you play football, whether you play baseball, tennis, fishing's no different. To get better at your craft, it requires practicing. I have people all the time ask me or tell me, how can you practice fishing? You don't practice. Well, the only way you're gonna get better, guys, the only way you're gonna get better at your craft, whether you like to flip, whether no matter what you do, no matter what your favorite technique is, practice. You got to get out there. But flipping, uh, you could actually go in your backyard and practice your flipping. Uh, Practice your accuracy. Kind of master that craft, if you would, at how you could drop that bait right in on a target where you need to drop it. I work with a lot of high school kids from time to time. I boat captain some high school kids in their high school tournaments. Uh, Quite a few of my guide trips, I actually have people book me just to kind of learn whether they're a brand new flipper, never flipped a day in their life, or whether they flip all the time. They just want to hone in on their flipping. Now, the biggest mistake I see most people make when they're learning how to flip is they try to aim the bait to where they want it to go. And typically, when you try to aim the bait, what's going to happen is you're actually going to end up trying to push the bait to where you want it to go. I see this a lot with brand new flippers that's never flipped before. What they do is they end up trying to push the bait to where they want to go. Flipping is all about line control and wrist control. Now, granted, standing in your backyard doing this is going to be a little bit different than if you're actually standing on your boat, where the ground's actually going to be closer to where you are than the water will be if you're standing on the deck of your boat. But it still works. But one thing you could do is you could get some of your friends together that actually enjoy fishing, and get a group of guys together, or girls, your friends, and practice together. Make it a contest, make it a game. Get in your backyard and have a flipping contest, and you're basically practicing at the same time. Just kind of make it fun to practice. Um, Me being a fisherman, I'm very competitive. Most tournament anglers, you wouldn't be a competitive tournament angler if you're not a competitive person. So make it into a game and try to beat your friends at flipping, and actually you're going to be practicing. Accuracy, accuracy, accuracy. You can't stress enough. When you're flipping down a shoreline, and when I make my flip, before I get the bait back to make my next flip, I already know where the next flip's gonna go. So, as I'm concentrating on the flipping process, I'm scanning the uh, the edge of the water with my peripheral vision to see where I want that next flip to go, and I'm flipping with a purpose. I'm not flipping just to randomly flip. I'm I'm flipping to targets. I'm flipping to where I think that fish is going to be laying. Okay, and this comes into play for especially your bigger fish. Your bigger fish isn't going to want to chase a bait from 5, 6 feet away. Your bigger fish is going to want an easy meal. They want a meal that drops right down in front of them. So if you could actually put yourself in the fish's shoes, the fish's fins actually, and picture if I was a fish, where would I be laying down there? And you want to drop it right on top of where you think that fish is laying. That's where your accuracy comes in. If you see a hole where you think that fish is laying, and you miss that target by 2 feet, and there is a fish laying where you think that fish is laying, if you miss it by 2 feet, chances are that fish is not gonna swim that 2 feet to eat that bait. But if you hit that target and drop that bait right in on that hole where you think that fish is laying, she's gonna annihilate it. Okay? So accuracy, big key. Again, it's all in the wrist, all in your line control, and your line control meaning your line control, the speed of your line, and the thumb control you have on your line. But all about wrist control, speed control, and line control. Now it also helps to have a good flipping stick. Good equipment is key. Now what I like in a flipping stick, I like a rod that has strong power in the backbone of the rod, but it still has a little bit softer tip or faster tip. Um, the ultimate flipping stick that I use, this is a 7.9 Reaper rods, extra heavy, fast tip. Now this particular rod has massive power in the backbone of this rod, but it has the fast tip, which that fast tip's going to do a few different things for me. One thing that fast tip does when you set up, of course with braided line, everybody's using braided line to flip today. Braided line has absolutely no stretch. When you set up, there's absolutely no give in that line. So that faster tip is going to eliminate a couple things. It's going to eliminate that hook ripping out of the mouth of that powerful fish when that fish decides she wants to dig in. Okay, I still have the backbone of the rod to be able to get that fish up and control that fish, but it has the tip that's going to parabolically bend with that fish as that fish wants to dig in to help eliminate ripping the hook out. It's also going to eliminate blowing a hole in the fish's mouth on impact. So when you set up on that fish, it's not going to blow a dime-sized hole in the mouth of the fish. Chances are, when you load up, you have the power that's going to bury that hook, but that tip is going to eliminate blowing that hole where the hook's going to have a hole no sizer than the size of the hook when you get that fish in the boat. That's a couple things that faster tip does. The third thing it does is when you're flipping and you have a fish that hits you quick and decides she wants to take off as soon as she bites it, that tip allows that fish to give you a little bit more time to react. It'll allow that fish to load up on that rod a little bit longer and give you more time to react to set the hook on that fish, eliminating a stiffer tip on the rod. And a lot of your flipping sticks today, just for example, a heavy flipping stick, it has your heavy flipping stick going all the way down to the backbone of the rod. but its heaviness is carried all the way up through the tip. If you look at the tip of a lot of your flipping sticks, they're almost like a telephone pole from the reel seat all the way up. What that's going to do, that's going to not give any room for margin for error when that fish hits you quick. That faster tip is going to allow that fish to load up quicker on the rod tip versus actually loading up on your rod and pulling the bait out of the fish as that fish wants to take off. So it gives you a little bit more room for your hook set on a faster bite. So a lot of power, faster tip. Reaper rods, man, they know how to build a great flipping stick. The reel, I use a high-speed reel, 8-3-1. The reel I like to use for flipping is the Lew's Pro G. It's an 8-3-1 faster retrieve. When you flip, you get that bite, you want to get on her quick, and you want to get her out of the thick stuff as quick as possible. That faster retrieve allows you to do that. It allows you to get on that fish quicker and get her out quicker. So a faster retrieve, your Lew's Pro G. I actually modify my handle a little bit. I basically take the stock handle off of it. I put a little bit wider spread handle on with larger grips. The larger grips allows you to not have it lowers your chance of losing control of the grip as you're trying to crank down on the fish. It gives you a bigger handle to hang on to. Now you have 8-3-1, but with the longer handle, it gives more of a radius when you're turning, so it actually is going to increase the speed a tad with a little bit larger handle as well. Plus, it gives you a little bit better handle to hang on to versus a short handle. A little bit more room for a bigger guy and bigger fingers, but less chance of losing control of the handle when you're trying to crank down on the fish. Too many times you'll actually set up on that fish and lose the handle, and you're trying to catch up to the handle as you're trying to keep that fish on. So Lew's Pro G, 8-3-1, Reaper rods, got to check them out as well. Great equipment. Now another thing, I have a lot of people ask me, what's the difference between flipping and pitching? Well, when you're flipping, you're flipping pretty much between 2 feet in front of the boat and 5 or 6 feet in front of the boat, and you're flipping with a closed spool. You don't have your spool open. Okay, click over. This is basically flipping. You're just flipping with a slack line in front of the boat. Okay, when you're pitching, you could pitch 3 foot in front of the boat, or you could pitch up to 30-35 feet in front of the boat. Now I could actually pitch every bit as far as most people could cast overhand, but when you're pitching, you're going to have a lot softer presentation when your bait lands. If you make a cast overhand with a worm, when that bait drops in, it's going to drop in pretty hard and make a pretty hard splash when it comes in. But I could actually pitch that bait. If I could pitch that bait as far as I could throw overhand to where I want it to go, I could control that bait as that bait drops in, and I could almost deaden that bait right before it hits the water so it has a nice subtle fall. And again, sometimes it's actually better when your bait has a harder hit, when the fish are aggressive, because it actually attracts them. They actually think something's chasing that bait when it lands, because it lands with a lot more force. Sometimes it's better, but when the fish are spooky, when there's certain times you're going to want that subtle entry with that bait, and the only way to get a subtle entry, whether you're casting or whether you're pitching or flipping, it is to pitch and flip the bait underhand. You could actually deaden, and it's impossible for me to show you kind of how to deaden the bait. You just got to get out there and practice with it. But you could actually deaden that bait right before it hits, so it has a very nice, subtle impact on the water where it's not going to make any commotion, any noise when that bait lands. And when you're flipping, you're dropping in front of a big fish that might be otherwise spooky. You might not want to chase the bait. Drop it in front of her nice and subtle. She doesn't hear it land on the water, but as that bait drops in front of her, that's when she's gonna just, all she'll do is she'll suck it in. Okay? And a lot of times you're not even gonna feel that bite. That's why a good sensitive rod is very key. Be a line watcher. That big fish, you drop it in front of her, she sucks it in. A lot of times you don't even feel the bite. If you think there's a fish on there, but you're not sure, set the hook anyway. Okay, hook sets are free. But if that fish sucks it in and you're not sure, you almost feel like you're hung up, but you're not 100% positive. If you wait to feel that fish, if you wait to set up till you feel that fish, chances are when you feel that fish feels you, and a lot of times it's too late. If that fish feels you before you actually set up on her, she's gonna take off. She's gonna eat you alive. The bait's gonna be on its way out of the mouth before you actually pull the trigger on her. So very important. You want to, you know, when a bigger fish sucks that bait in, and you think you have your bait hung, well, it's going to be a little bit different feel. What type of feel you're going to have? It's almost going to be like a spongy type of a hang up. You could actually feel yourself hung, but it's more of a spongy type of a hang up. If you feel that, chances are that bait's inside a big fish's mouth. Okay? If you're hung up in the grass, it's going to be more of a sharp hang up where you'll be able to tell the difference once you get the feel of what that big fish feels like with it in her mouth, whether you're hung up or not. It'll be more of a sharp hang up where big fish almost is going to be more spongy. But if you feel that, you want to be setting up on her before that fish feels you, because then it's going to be too late. I would say 90% of the fish I set up on flipping, I never feel the fish. Never once feel that fish. Probably 90% of the time when I set up on a flipping fish, because that fish, it drops right in front of her. She has it in her mouth. She sucks it in as it goes by. You'll never have a line twitch. You'll never feel the bump. All you're doing is that bait's dropping in right in front of that fish. It sucks it in. She'll just suck it right in. The fish won't move a muscle, but she has it in her mouth. Now when you go to lift up on that rod to twitch that bait a couple times before you reflip, you're going to lift up and it's going to feel like you're hung up. Well, in hindsight, you're not hung up. You're going to have more of a spongy type of a hang up. If you feel that spongy type of a hang up versus a sharp hang up like you're typically hung up in a weed, you want to be setting the hook, because if that fish feels you before you set up on her, typically you're done. It's too late. So that's a key. That's a good key right there. You always, and even if you think it's a fish but you're not 100% sure, be setting up on that fish. Again, hook sets are free. Hook sets are free. And if you're fishing with a partner off of the front deck, make sure he realizes when you're flipping, especially when you're flipping heavier weights, both of you need to have your head on a swivel, because you ain't lived until you have a 1 ounce weight coming back like a 22 rifle, about to hit you square in the chest. And believe me, it'll happen. Have your head on a swivel. Be ready, because when you're flipping, and again, if you're not sure, you want to be setting up. But again, be ready to duck, because I don't care how good you are, how good you get, you're going to have weights coming back at you pretty quick from time to time. So always have your head on a swivel when you're flipping. But again, line control, wrist control. Never try to aim the bait. Never try to push the bait. It's basically just a flick of the wrist is all you want. Get out, get in your backyard, practice, guys. It's all about practicing. Don't be bashful about getting out in your backyard and having people say, "Oh, you're fishing in your backyard, ha 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 ha." It's what a lot of guys do. A lot of the big names out there, that's how they practice. They'll get in their backyard and they'll spend 1 hour a day out in their backyard flipping and practicing. Is what you got to do to hone your skills, guys. Get out, get in the backyard, make a game of it with your buddies. Make it a contest, make it fun, but get out and practice. The only way you're going to get better at anything you do, whether it's flipping, fishing, football, baseball, tennis, is practice. And fishing's no different. Fishing's a sport. I have never heard of a sport that, it doesn't require practice to hone your skills and get better, and fishing's no different. Guys, until next time, tight lines, flip on, guys. Get out and practice.
Whoa!
Check this out, boys and girls.